about 8 miles of Prairieville, Louisiana.
Rex Bear Leak Project. What you were looking at is the best video footage I have seen yet of what could be a brown dwarf binary star that's orbiting our sun, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever name you want to put to it, Nemesis. Danny, a professional photographer, he went to school for this, he sent me this footage. He is on this presentation with me for about an hour discussing various shots that he's picked up in Louisiana and even the North Dakota-Canada border. Enjoy the presentation.
Just in case, out of the corner of my eye, because I've definitely seen a lot of good, compelling footage where I'm like, oh, good, finally an authentic one. And I look at all the pixelation rate and how it moves around, and to get a sense on what to look for, you know, something that someone's done with CGI and stuff like that. It depends on what channel I'm on when I'm cruising that kind of stuff. But it's definitely a lot of stuff out there. And being unplugged, that was another thing coming back. Plugging back in when I wanted to start getting an overview on what I was seeing. So I know I wasn't alone, and started finding groups, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look what they saw, you know, and kind of being late to the party, but yet coming with my own footage. That's kind of the only way I wanted to come to the party. I didn't want to get involved in, you know, getting too lost in all the research or the disinformation, if you will. But when I saw this, I had 3 pairs of sunglasses on, and another time I was using an arc TIG welding mask that auto dims down. It's got 3 layers of LCD that changes its consistency. But to safely watch the sun, I felt that was the only way and to save my eyes. But when the brightness of the sun disappeared, this appeared very, very, very light to the human eye. Behind the blue intense gradation levels that are right next to the sun when you look at it. And on photo, if you take a pinhole camera, the blue sky will get darker and darker as you get farther out on the frame. So I whipped out my phone and just using, okay, as you see here, a simple sun filter from my big camera. I put that over my iPhone 6 Plus, and I was able to manually expose up and down using this filter.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's fine. So now this is in Louisiana, and how long ago was it? And
this was on March 31st.
Oh, just recently. I mean,
just recently, just a couple days ago. My first footage came on in October of 2014 about. And this was just my most recent, and I'd say my best video, because I knew this time what to look for and what to do on when I saw it. And so I'm going to play it here. And what I'm doing this time, once I'm using a sun filter that's from my Canon lens and having it over top of my camera, I'm able to get a better view when my f-stop eye closed down to a pinhole, which is right here. When it's at its brightest, that's about what the human eye can see. So that's why we can't see it looking straight at the sun usually, because of the gradient level of light coming into our atmosphere. In my opinion, I got to make sure I say that, because I'm definitely on board with any scientists or anyone helping out in the comments or breaking it down. I follow the white papers on releases on a couple different channels, and they go over really good scientific data, and they source all their stuff as much as they can. In weeding out this very topic of Planet X or Nibiru or you know, a rogue system, a dwarf star, and the way this thing's behaving is starting to really, to me in my mind, be more of a dwarf star. Because at first, my videos I released, this is not Venus, taking photos or videos of an object that showed up in our western sky, but just brighter than heck. And knowing our planetary position and putting Venus in front of Earth and being its dark side to Earth, why is it being so bright at night, right before sunset, and about 40 minutes before to 50 minutes after? So right here, I ran to my backyard to get a different perspective and to maybe get away from some of the reflective items on the road. Now I'm closing the eye back down, zooming in, I refocus, and then finish with a zoom out shot. But right there, it's, to me, it's what could be causing Venus to have its crazy gravity wave that everyone's talking about.
You know, Danny, I was looking at that footage. Let me just jump in here, and I'm thinking of, I've seen cameras before that will pick up, they'll record the sun, and it's so bright that it causes another sun right next to it, but a smaller one essentially, or what looks like another sun, or a brown dwarf or something like that. So
You say the mass is so crazy. It's like four times more than Jupiter. I know my numbers are off, but it's more than Jupiter, even though it's like half the size of, you know, they explain it in the mass. And I went on one of the NASA.govs before they started taking out the missing footage, as you see on this, and I was like, what am I seeing? Around that same day of a different footage I'll show you I got on 125 on January 25th. This light anomaly, it disappears, but then we also see that. There's been a longer video since this one was taken of the completion of this anomaly. And I'm like, well, maybe eventually I'll see it on the Science Channel. You know, what on earth is that, right? That show is pretty wild and fun to watch. This is my footage I took of Venus. It took me forever to manually focus on this and be zoomed in by digital 40 and be fixed. My phone shakes a couple times there, unfortunately, but in cutting the sound off, this seemed to me, after focusing and zooming in, to be rotating or to be receiving a heck of a lot of auroras. And we're not the only planet that receives auroras. It's usually with planets with some sort of atmosphere or magnetosphere. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to remember, well, I'm trying to decipher if this is Venus or not. Now that Venus has moved, this object really hasn't shown up, at least in the southern states, right before sundown and right after. But moving ahead, it's consistent to me in being a time-lapse photographer for night of the Northern Lights, purple and green. And when I'm talking about purple and green, I have sent in a couple of my footage of the Northern Lights to the Alaska's Institute of where they mostly study all the auroras, and they usually give the aurora forecast. And I know there's a censorship going on in this fake news breakdown, and you know, if they're getting rid of fake news, but at the same time, it's like they're also taking away our own opinion and stuff we share that have questions about. And I know you've talked about that on some of your broadcasts before. And you know, the fight against that has become harder and harder every week, it seems like. And so that's another reason I decided to share and finally post on my public page versus being in groups, so I could get some feedback, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't seeing anything that really wasn't there. And taking a look here at this video, this was my January 25th. I'm shaking around my flare in this video, and as you can see, it's smaller. So in distance, it's of course closer to the Earth, but it's also in front of the sun. I've stopped this and inverted my screen before color-wise, and I could see its shape on the front part of the sun right here. But in being a fixed object and moving around, and people sometimes are telling me to turn my camera, shake it. So I'm shaking it and turning it in this object. I've seen some where it's over here. I've seen some where it's over here. And so in this thing, deciding how it's gonna loop around our sun or what's its orbit is all a mystery to me. But I truly believe something is there. And unfortunately, we're being kept in the dark. And I think it's really up to, you know, firsthand viewers and physicists, community, people who want disclosure to come together and discuss what matters to us. And you've been really consistent on that ever since I started following your channel, and I respect that in you, Rex, and kudos, because it is hard. I've had a couple trollers come on through the groups and attack me, and like you said, it's like you got 40 emails in one day. They're going on your Instagram, posting all these disinformation, crazy theories that just have no valid meaning anymore. And when you talked about the active campaign of disinformation, I was like, I get it. And I was like, I have to get a hold of this guy one way or the other. I have to see if I could have a conversation with him. I'm so happy that you accepted that request, man. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you reached out. And, you know, if we could go back to that footage again, if you want to share that with us.
This was on January 28th, 25th, right around there. And I actually stopped because when I was driving, I stopped by this big oak tree that's right here by our entrance to this area where I'm staying at down here. And I looked up, and that day too, it was very, very hot. The sun felt hotter than normal. And when I took a picture, which I'll get to later, what looked like to be stratospheric clouds near the Gulf of Mexico, I was like ice crystals, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Now they're just naming new clouds just to get us, oh sure, Norway, they're beautiful and they're purple and they're way up there. But I'm sitting here looking at these colors, and I'm like, there's no way that's stratospheric clouds. No one could tell me that they are. I know my airspace is in like 60,000, 80,000 feet, all the way up to 110,000, very outside edge. I'm thinking helium debris, helium-3 and helium-4 refracts and reflects to those light properties. And that happens during any season where they're shooting movies or time lapses, and they need to cancel out light pollution so they get the true black of the aspect of space, or take away the orange hue that you usually get from cities that are invading your shot. It all comes down to the temperature of light that you can manually select and cancel out. And just learning about that, because I went to school for photography, and I was almost done. I had like 3 months left, then I had to be fused together because of my injury. But I did take a lot of knowledge away that I'm so happy I was able to, because it's really paying off right now.
Let me jump in real quick on that note,
Yes.
Ben, because if you went to photography school or went to school for photography,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be a professional photographer, what would you say when somebody's recording the sun and there is a second, what looks like a smaller sun to the left of it, and it doesn't move either? I mean, it stays in the same position, but it's because of the equipment of the camera.
Yes, depending on if they're using the type of glass that is cooled in a long distance, or if it's cooled in a pressure, like crystal is, depending on who makes the lenses and who makes the crystal, what coating they put on it. They usually put a anti-static coating that's usually purple in working with your flares, because in cinematography and in panning shots, and you want that line of flare from the sun to work with you to add movement, or I'd say specific sun trails, they call them, or sun flares. All depends on how many layers of glass you have between you and the actual CMOS sensor or eye of your recording device. And green is usually an anti-scratch protectant, where the finest particles won't scratch and they'll just fall off. But yet, if you really want to scratch it, you can cut through both those sprayed or baked type chemicals. But they create, if you see here, usually 2 different size flares. See the bigger one right here on the outside?
Yep.
And the smaller one. It's because the bigger one, purple comes in at a certain light wave and bounces off the eye. And then the second one is, which I believe, this small dot in front of this bigger dot, this smaller lens flare is the flare actually from the second illuminated object. It's not a flare from the sun. I believe this is the sun, and just the way I'm angled to it from Earth, at least on the way our tilt was, in seeing it's a definite fixed out, and it's not just a flare. I mean, I looked at the sun too. There was no big, CMEs or anything. I'm like, am I looking at a flare that's, it's 5 times the size of Earth? How can this be?
I got to jump in here real quick.
Sure.
My mind's going a million miles an hour. I've got a nice Celestron scope, and I've got a sun filter on that scope that I can actually just stare at it as long as I want. And it's just this beautiful orange color, and you can see the occasional solar flare that pops up and stuff. I should be able to see that with my telescope.
Correct. But then I also have to add in the days that I've not seen it. And why can't I see it? And I get a lot of other people, I can't see where I'm at. And I'm like, are they spraying where you're at? My first outlet was actually Instagram. And I put this one on Instagram. And it was a couple days after when I started filming working with my flares, but then zooming all the way in and kind of saying to myself, well, what the crap is this? I actually had to cut out the part where I put my camera down, was cleaning my lens off and swearing, because I'm like, there's no flipping way. Because at this time in 2014, I knew, about Nibiru, Planet X, the arrival, the passing, whatever they want to call it. So we really have full disclosure. I just have to be careful on what I call it and title it, because there's probably multiple objects. There's a couple of the ISS feeds that I've taken screenshots before they cut the feed, and I'm like, well, what's this now? Looking into anomalies. I ran down to Grand Isle in Louisiana, and the sun was setting. There was some storms on the western horizon. And I'm just sitting there taking photos. And I was doing a little bit longer exposures because I was using a pinhole, so I could really capture in the gradients change of the sunset and how it actually cuts through the blue sky. And you do a longer exposure to get this effect, because more data is able to come in on a slower exposure rate with a closed down eye versus having a big open eye in low light situations. You'll get a little movement in your clouds now and then, but in water, an intentional move, I like that. But all of a sudden, this lightens up and from a slow dim, and I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, oh, 2, 3, click, and take a 2.5 second exposure. And it took me a while to not expose against this. My main goal in getting the final shot was to make sure I could see the cloud line, the rays from the sun being behind the clouds, so I could really capture and close down this, because it was very hard to see without, putting on my welding goggles or my free sunglasses, like the guy from Airplane, where he's like, let me tell you another thing, Jim. He takes off that. 2 pairs of sunglasses in a row. It's classics. And not too many people talk about that one. I was like, there's so many, but that's one of my favorites, because it just gets me every time. This was on February 28th. And what sucked about this video is I ran it through a quick program to try to slow it down, and it shrank the size of it because I was shaking around quite a bit. It's a battle, Rex. It's a battle what's going on right now. I'm just trying to share and have your opinion and talk to, both sides of people's opinions. Like if they're super hardcore against this, well, it's kind of hard to have a conversation with a person. And comparing facts, because my main goal is to discover the truth. Yeah, finding out the truth for me. And when it's to the right of the sun here, and you're 3 o'clock, as you see, I'm moving around, and this is actually going through 2 sets of trees. One branch comes like this, one branch comes like that. But it was to the right of the sun that day. And it was very, very, very dim, but the sky was very, very, very hazy too. It was covered in this weird luminescence spray. And I kept saying to myself, they're trying to hide that flipping color.
Now,
Or whatever this dwarf is, they're hiding it. And when that jet stream blows, at least from the Gulf, so fast, which I believe, it thins out their mixture. Boom, I can see it. But it doesn't last because they're out there spraying again. In one of my Instagram videos, where I looked up where the moon was on my app for the time and date where I'm actually live, the moon's on my feet on the other side of the earth. And I'm looking up at this white crescent object, which I thought was the moon. And I'm like, that's not the moon. So I started a live broadcast on my Instagram. And I'm like, hey guys, I've been posting about Venus and large objects. And what is this? And I like slowly showing everybody instantly. It was like they were planning on, at least in this location, I don't know, one trail going right across, followed by another one, making an X, and then splitting down the middle, a third jet, all crisscrossing within each other simultaneously perfectly. And I thought at first, these guys are going to hit each other. I'm like, what's going on? And I zoom in off the object to the jet.
show us that video, can you?
Yeah. Let's see, where'd it go? That's when I started actually following your channel, because you've been following the stratospheric aerosol geoengineering for quite a bit, and you've been really good about sourcing your data and going through right on your streams here, looking in the news feeds, C-SPAN, definitely trying to stay out of the fake news line of fire, and it's everywhere. And for me, I knew that fake news started after 9/11. Because in being in many cockpits before, and as a kid in the early 90s, when they let you go up in a cockpit, I knew what 727s, 37s, 57s, 67s, 777s felt like, the size. And I saw the Pentagon, and I was thinking to myself, why are they trying to tell me that what should be a hole the size of a trampoline is the size of a baseball? A big backyard trampoline circle, and then putting a baseball and saying, well, there was a jet. And all the air crash investigations since TWA Flight 800. One thing I've always noticed in every aircraft crash investigation is always landing gear. No matter how mangled or burnt, there is landing gear. And there was not a lot of landing gear. And I know there's some of this new release footage now coming out of the first moments. And I was looking at that.
Yeah, I saw that, man. I'll tell you, there's like 2 little pieces of the plane. I'm thinking to myself, okay,
something's not right. And then
two tiny pieces of a plane here. Yeah.
You knew my gut. My gosh, the evils are winning today. They're pulling this. They're pulling something. They're pulling the cloak over our eyes. And I was like seeing all this pain and destruction. I knew this was going to get a lot of people excited, and people took advantage of that anger, excitement, and fear. And it was, I believe, it was a really sad conspiracy that maybe one day will come to light. So many people have gone through all the facts and how they've tried to open up reinvestigations, get shut down, and the committee, the 9/11 report committee, they've tried to, show that one instance, you know, on the Oklahoma bombing, they showed like the investigative file. It was like, you know, 22 inches thick. And this book was like 52 pages. It was a leaflet compared to other stuff. Why don't you think on such a big event such as that, it would not be libraries of data, libraries of reports and investigations from all the cell phone calls on the planes that day, and really putting together the picture. And I said, they're not releasing any of this because they don't want to. Just like flight MH370. I said to myself, why on earth is Rolls-Royce not releasing their GPS tracking data from the missing 3 hours after the last check-in? They still checked in for 3 hours or something. Their engines. Why not releasing that GPS data? Then they're like, well, because we don't have to. Okay, that's a horrible excuse. I don't know if they've changed their mind since then, but that's when I really stopped following that, because I said, covering up. This poor plane either went through a slip, a time slip in the atmosphere, or you remember seeing those blue spirals over Norway?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And hearing plane pilot testimony of feeling like they're falling, being sucked forward, and being able to go impossible distances with the little fuel and prop engine driven planes, but all of a sudden they're 600 miles in a different place. And I said to myself, maybe that plane accidentally went through one of those blue spirals, or that slip. There's a lot of magnetic stuff that we still don't know about our Earth and how different areas are affected. And I was like, well, of course they're not going to release this. No one else would fly again, you know. So they're going to have to throw some plane parts, you know, that belong to a 767 when it should have belonged to a 777. But then they started just, oh, well, we got to make sure we get the right parts with the serial numbers. And unfortunately, it's still a big question mark for what happened to that. I'm just trying to get on the Instagram because my computer unfortunately lost its hard drive not too long ago. After some of my first posts, and luckily I've had backups and I popped a new one in there, but it's unfortunate.
It's just highly concentrated swamp gas from Uranus, ladies and gentlemen. There's no need to get into Danny's computer hard drives. Nothing to worry here. Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen.
Videos on some
swamp gas.
What are you gonna find? And I was like, man, this must be real. That's exactly what I said. This must be real. I'm onto something. And so part of me bit the bullet, and see this coloring around the sun, that purple. And
yeah.
That was right before I stopped on the other side of that oak tree to take that video, which
na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye. Hard drive goes down.
And it was a solid state too, and I was like, I didn't drop this thing. Come on, solid state drive. But
shapeshifters, man, they got you. They dropped a Stuxnet virus in there and rewrote it, took it out.
This was 3 weeks ago. I can't look back to know exactly what date I posted this, but this was a screenshot stop of ISS. And I saw all this haze above our normal area where we got our blue crisp line from our dome. But I was looking at this, and I pulled up where the ISS was from NASA's app, and they're like, oh, they're over Africa. And this is supposed to be the moon, but the moon is supposed to be over here on the other side of the Earth, going in a loop like this. Comes around, at least from their angle and where they at timestamp. I'm like, well, what is this? Right before they cut it. At first, there were so many things going on. This is actually just a smudge on the window. Some people were like, oh, there's a UFO again. But I've watched the ISS.
It looks like a reflection to me.
Stream, and this thing comes and goes about every 6 hours, depending on where the light's coming in. But this, completely new. This and how it dissipates. And I don't believe that's the moon. But then we got two purple UFOs, which I believe are objects in different luminescence. And at 3 frames is all I could go back on my record before they cut this feed. And they were fixed. And they only became illuminated when the camera slowly started, this came from the left side of the screen, and all of a sudden it was like, dun, 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 hello. And these two were moving in unison with this, and just coming in, dun, 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 just like that, and then stopped. Here we go. I forgot about this one. This was 7 weeks ago. This was in the middle of March. I'm actually getting 2 different flares from 2 different light sources with its own angle. And I've seen actually this specific type of flare in other shots from people from down in South America and Europe, the UK, a couple over like in even South Korea and China, depending on what type of year it was. Over the years, I'm picking up when these photos were out there on the web, out there on social media. But this specific jet up and jet down, and like how versus the sun. If you see the sun's flare with this huge rainbow halo.
You took this image?
Yeah, this is just from my driveway.
And this is from the same iPhone 6.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in Louisiana.
Louisiana, no filter. This was just a regular Sunday, and because I was trying to get this right here, and like I said, no more than 45 to 60 seconds before there's clouds over here, it was gone. And it was so thick that day, it was kind of like a disco ball in the very, very distance that wasn't spinning, but you know, sometimes has different light angles hitting it because the sun near the horizon appears to be moving really faster. And at this time of day, I only had 2 fingers to the horizon left, which is about 30 minutes. But I learned in the Boy Scouts, at least. I kept something from those.
Yeah.
Right here, I'm actually first going into these jets. I'm like, holy shit. I was like, there's no way I'm going to cap. Maybe I will. But see this other one going right behind him. These guys are having fun today. That's what I said. And I was like, there's no way. Look at this guy coming right, head on to this guy. And then they both, one goes right, one goes left. So I knew to my mind that these guys are retired fighter pilots and making more than an X, but a triple cross right over me directly on my 8 weeks ago. This one I posted right away. Filming this crescent white, which I thought was the moon at first, object that was at 90 degrees directly above me. I'm looking straight up. There we go, folks. That's what I was trying to get the whole time. And I was like, now what the crap are they trying to hide now? Because I've seen the sun halos. I've seen those so-called stratospheric clouds over the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, I'm thinking, no way. Something's up. I have to investigate. I have to research. I have to hear people's theories. And I want answers just like anyone else, because I don't want to definitely be part of misinformation myself inadvertently, just because whatever they're doing is working so they can discredit you, or the trollers can do what they want. I had one guy tell me, I've worked in the industry for like 25 years. And one of my Instagram followers just sent in some of his stuff on one of my comments. He said, you'd be surprised if you have a pro or even close to pro title next to your name and being in the media arts, you are definitely a target, because people might turn to you a little bit more and saying, this guy's a legit, you know, and which I take as a compliment. But at the same time, I don't want to, discredit by posting something on such controversial until I have seen other footage like mine, because it could have been something that day. It could have been, so many things. But I said, who makes 3 intersections across each other, having a blast? That's what I said from a pilot's perspective. I had some heart problems in early high school, and that prevented me from pursuing my pilot's license. But I turned to the music and the arts, and definitely filled my gap for the need to be as creative as I can from the ground, at least. I've always wanted to do aerial shots, but I zoom in and I say to myself, okay, we've all seen the moon during the day. Looking this up on this specific day, the moon is on my feet and not eclipsed right now. It was just the day after it's full. So if this was the moon during the day, it should have been just a slice missing, not a slice left.
I would think that you would see a little more detail, wouldn't you? If it was the moon, shouldn't you be able to see some type of,
like one little of the craters
enough where you've got a big enough TV screen, maybe see a crater or something?
And it felt like it was farther away, like it was a different size, why I flipped out my phone. And if anyone in any area, let's give it a 1,200-mile radius from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If anyone else was posting pictures about this, that's the area of effectiveness I believe that these sprays can cover, just on how distance is from the ground to the edge of space. And we're always talking about angles, how light enters the atmosphere, how light scatters. I've loved space since I've been a little kid, and I always wanted to learn more. And it just definitely...
Those are just commercial jets going out to their location. They left from the airport. Those aren't chemtrails, son. You're a conspiracy theorist.
I know. It's just like, okay, sure. If people want to title me that, certainly, fine. I love it. Just don't close off your ears. That's all I ask, because I'm after the truth too. And would I love to be wrong about a dwarf star invading our solar system? Sure. Who wouldn't want to be wrong about that? Because it's definitely messing up Venus, creating gravity waves everywhere, bringing in a bunch of rogue buttholes from our Kuiper belt, starting with the big Russian comet that broke lots of windows and a lot of eardrums. It was quite an event.
So let me jump in real quick because I just had a thought.
Was the coronal hole sizes and watching the sun over time and watching the sun reports, because I wanted to know where I could be on the planet to intercept northern lights. And at least from my perspective, right, I said to myself.
Now, while you're doing this, though, let me just jump in, because if a brown dwarf star got close enough to the sun, could gravity, essentially cause it to orbit our sun?
Well, if it came in or if it showed up, I'm always thinking about this too from a different perspective, because I really don't agree with what they're doing with their science at CERN and or the quantum computer in creating rifts or slips and being in an area where a lot of things could change. I'd say if in the way my mechanics of my mind works scientifically and thinking about magnets and why they're not colliding with each other is because they're so charged that the closer they get, the more they repel each other. But if a dwarf was to come into our system and be entangled in our sun, because our sun, which is moving actually forward, everything is moving forward. We're not just spinning around in a circle fixed, hanging out in space. We're moving, and we're actually speeding up while moving forward, which is good, because otherwise all these cosmic rays wouldn't be moving around us. They would just be slowly coming towards us and just saturate everything. So what's all moving, I think, is a good thing. Except when a rogue dwarf star comes in, would create a loop around the northern and southern pole, which I believe only from my footage, it would be first farther away, and it would loop around the north, come around the south, loop around the north, come around the south, maybe swing out and respond to the coronal holes on the sun and be or charging up itself and causing the sun to open up like a pear, or peel back like an apple. Huge from the southern pole to the northern pole, these black coronal holes, and I'm like looking at the solar wind stream and been following that for quite a while too, to intercept the northern lights. And I just saying to myself, this is crazy, going and looking at our magnetosphere and just back on 2/2. This is February 7th. And first noticing this, just for my Instagram followers, because that's where I first started out in helping spread my word and get others' opinions and feedback. Looking at the colors and studying different graphs from different years, different solar minimums. This swapping of these red bands are our last electron bands. I call them our backups. And the most recent of deleted ones, I was able to screenshot before they took them out, because I saw that day. Back there on 313 and or 314, I can't remember when it was for sure, but a lot of guys did a video on the missing data. Just like a week after I was able to grab the data, at least, because when I saw the bands going nuts, I was saying to myself, this is absolutely wild. This is one thing I noticed about our jet stream, Rex, too, and our crazy weather pattern. This green line represents usually normal and good jet stream, healthy, maybe goes back and forth a little bit. But in tracing our current jet stream, we got reversing in 2 different directions, pushing out, going north. It is going nuts right now.
So let me ask a question about that. How long has it been that green flow? Just since they've been testing it or recording it?
I must have noticed the green. I drew the green on there just on reading aviation maps, growing up, learning what a good healthy jet stream is, knowing how to use the jet stream to your advantage. Especially if you lose fuel and you got to turn around, you got to get as close to that jet stream before you can turn in the direction you want to go with it, and learning about the jet stream, and then learning about this current pattern of this jet stream that has stuck around since November is when I noticed all this slack in the U's, which kind of led me a little bit more research into, learning about the pole shift theories and or current data that's coming in from independent sources and our wobble. I saw this moving. This is the sun, actually. But I did see on 211, look at this extra dark. This is one thing I was adding to as a question. What was this that day? And this was the composite of 211, 193, and day. I'm going to turn this on just so you guys can hear this. This was during a 2:30 in the morning storm, and because of the green glow, I thought maybe a tornado was coming. But there was definitely a light source that night during this rainstorm and a sound. Listen. Can you hear that?
It's like a distant battle of the world sound.
The first thing I thought of, because some of the lower tones I couldn't pick up with my phone with my ears, and in my breastbone I could feel it. It sounded like huge metal doors, or like in our Star Wars movies when they make contact with another ship, when a door closes, that huge metal sound coming together, but then kind of thump, like an airlock almost, if you will. Sound effect. Inside. I did my own little research, and I'm wanting to capture strange sounds in the sky, which was really exciting for me because I'm like, what is going on in the storm? Hearing all these crazy pitch noises, knowing what tornadoes sound like with their whistles, and what to listen for if you got to get in the safe part of your home. This was 6 weeks ago. I posted this. This was about the same time Orville Dam was going on, and not being able to. This was right when their overspill happened, and I started noticing. Wow, that's when the storms were going on, at least in Louisiana. That I was able to capture this. But yeah, that sound was definitely something I don't want to hear again. But it was also because it really made the hair back of your neck really stand up. It certainly did. What was your question? I want to make sure I get back to it, not get off track there. Right.
You did tell me earlier that you took some footage at one time in the Canadian North Dakota area, like the border out there, correct? You know, it's interesting because I'm going to be going out to South Dakota here in just a month and a half, actually, May 19th through the 21st. There's the X Fest. Leak Project teamed up with the Vivos, and if anybody's ever seen these shelters, they've got everything from these just amazing underground 5-star resort type facilities.
Oh right, I've seen those. I've seen the videos of what you can expect out of your bunker.
Well, the ones that we're doing out in South Dakota is different versus the ones that I was just talking about. In South Dakota, these things are 2,200 approximately square foot concrete bunkers that are military spec. And man, after watching this video, I'm glad that I've got one.
Awesome. I'm glad that at least, I mean, hey, I'm pretty laid back when it comes to people sometimes talking about the end of the world and doomsday. I just take it with, oh well, then that's fine. I believe that's just the beginning. If it's gonna come, okay. But I'm gonna get good pictures up until the last second. Get good footage, put a whole bunch of GoPros on my car and be chased by that, ash cloud. But I was like, they'll find the footage. It'll be the last footage. So just going off of my Yukon is how I like saying that, at least. But this was in northern North Dakota, 4 miles from the border in a region known as the Turtle Mountains. Basically, North Dakota is only any raised area. It's where the glacier stopped right after it crossed the border. So there's a bunch of granite, and it's about 2,200 feet. Not too crazy. We call them mountains because they're basically hills. But since they're our only ones in our state, we call them the Turtle Mountains. And definitely it's got its own climate, own feel, and doesn't make you think of the movie Fargo at all. Which I actually lived in. I lived in that city. It's a great city a few times, which was really sad for actually people who live in Fargo. Knowing the movie Fargo, they filmed it all in Minnesota, and they featured all these Minnesota type of settings. Not once, there's a couple scenes in where they were sitting in Main Street of Fargo, like from the FBI division from Fargo during the movie. But I was like, man, why couldn't I just spend the whole time in our town? That'd be cool. But it was a great movie nonetheless.
Now,
for me at least.
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on that. But I'm looking at this video right here, and I'm seeing lens flares bouncing off of both of the light anomalies that are to the left of the sun. Now, once again, I'm asking you, was that a 3-lens camera? So it's picking up the sun 3 different times? Because look at how straight those two, if you look at those two anomalies, you could put like a ruler and it would even up with the sun almost, wouldn't it?
I'd have to say, I get exactly what you're saying, but for flares and being this object was not visible to my eye. So what I thought was it was actually the flare of this object over here. And once again, this was actually with my iPhone 5. Back then I had an iPhone 5. That's when I took this. And looking at the sun in angles and how it goes against the trees, water, these 2 big flare. I didn't have any like lens filter on that day. It was just my dry phone, no case. And zooming in and being able to see the whole cloud level and why it was darker that day, I thought it was just a mistake of my phone, a mistake of my camera. I didn't find this footage until the footage I just took. this was actually in one of my old folders on one of my backup computers where I keep all my RAWs. And I didn't really think of anything much that day because it didn't even hit me. I was zooming in and I was going left, I was going right. I'm like, what is that? What is going on? I, closed my aperture down. I think actually this date was on auto. That's why it's going bright and dim, bright and dim. When I go towards the sun and zoom in, it was on auto aperture that day, aperture priority. And sometimes that's what people have to wonder when they're looking at webcams of Mexico, webcams of the horizon. They're like, what's our sun doing? Oh my God, it's flashing, it's going all this crazy. I've never seen the sun do that. Well, a lot of these cameras that are sitting on top of buildings are always on automatic aperture priority, AI, servo, which is a automatic metering system that shoots out little signals and corrects as the day goes by. So everything, at least when it starts getting dimmer, will automatically brighten up and you'll get a nice consistent video. If you wanted to close down the sun and have a fixed view of the sun fully going through the horizon, that's the webcams I'm only interested in, versus second light anomalies. But I've seen a lot of these day cams that people go through, and when they're talking about the sun strobing, the sun lightning, I keep saying to myself, well, yeah, but I know how old cameras work, and I know that in photography, when we're trying to do a professional type of high production value, there's certain steps that you have to take to set up how you're going to shoot the sun. Where are you going to start with your f-stop? Is the sun going to look?
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Go back just real quick, because it looked like I saw clouds in front of that light source, the second light source. And I just want to pause there.
Yeah.
Please continue.
This front actually that night was kind of hazy, but there were some clouds that were, I guess, in the distance. Over here, we were at a cloud-free area. But in how it actually is brightening up the clouds, the cloud line of kind of being that hazy type of quick-moving clouds that aren't that high.
You know what? Here's what I see. I see the lens flare definitely to the left of this second light source. That to me, I would say, is absolutely a lens flare, no question. Now the one, but then you even had, well, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
So those two, I mean, these bouncing around, I see are the flare, right? And I think this was so confusing to me. That's why I really got into it. I was like, oh, maybe my phone's dying, it's broken, or did I drop my phone? That's what I thought I did. When I dropped my phone, when I was helping harvest, did something get jostled inside? Because when I first start out, these are the flares and they move around, but this is also a third fixed object, right? And they do draw quite a straight line. I don't know the angle to the sun. I mean, there's ways to figure that out. And a lot of times when I post to them, like any experts or physicists or scientists or mathematicians, would love to explain it to me. I'm willing to listen and understand as much as I can what is going on. Going back to the sun to have my camera automatically dim down for me is what I was doing when I was going right and left, because I was trying, like right here, I was trying to catch the luminescence of it just slightly being behind the haze of clouds that were just slowly moving, let me try that again, from left to right. I'm looking directly west. So this cloud's moving from the south, going about north by northeast, not going too fast, but just going like along here, that way. And that is when I went back after getting my footage just recently. I was like, I remember that time I was at the lake and a weird thing showed up, because when it was right next to the sun in this video, I said to myself, something is up, because I'm getting the same effect, but it's in a different position. So there's a timeline involved with this, trying to figure out its orbit, listening to a lot of people's theories. But when lens flares and how light enters the Earth's dome, there's 4 different conflicting theories. They're in similar subject, but they're conflicting with each other and how they're explained. Well, it's light's this and this is that. People sometimes forget about the infrared meters. Your camera's set an aperture priority, meaning it'll move the eye, versus moving how fast the film speed or digital film speed, how fast the shutter goes, click, click, or click, click, to create a shot that's still visually correct in producing, a workable shot such as this. Yeah, a lot of questions I have about this for sure. But have you done any research on any of the gravity wave that was on Venus, or this said that there was a gravity wave. Some people caught some clouds in Australia that were moving over pretty quick. It was a time lapse that was very, very wild. And I've never seen any clouds move like that, even in a time lapse, on how it looked like we were at the bottom of a pool. And being under Northern Lights, which are this color, I was told by at least the students and professors when I sent this in, they wanted to know where I was and how they look, because this is a 90-degree angle above me. And I was just lucky enough to be in the epicenter of where this flare bounced off our atmosphere this time around.
We're located where again when you did this footage?
Just south of Baton Rouge, about 8 miles of Prairieville, Louisiana.
Rex Bear Leak Project. What you're looking at is the best video footage I have seen yet of what could be a brown dwarf binary star that's orbiting our sun, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever name you want to put to it, Nemesis. Danny, a professional photographer, he went to school for this, he sent me this footage. He is on this presentation with me for about an hour discussing various shots that he's picked up in Louisiana and even the North Dakota-Canada border. Enjoy the presentation.
Just in case, out of the corner of my eye, because I've definitely seen a lot of good, compelling footage where I'm like, oh, good, finally an authentic one. And I look at all the pixelation rate and how it moves around, and to get a sense on what to look for, you know, something that someone's done with CGI and stuff like that. It depends on what channel I'm on when I'm cruising that kind of stuff. But it's definitely a lot of stuff out there. And being unplugged, that was another thing coming back. Plugging back in when I wanted to start getting an overview on what I was seeing, because I know I wasn't alone, and start finding groups, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look what they saw, you know, and kind of being late to the party, but yet coming with my own footage. That's kind of the only way I wanted to come to the party. I didn't want to get involved in, you know, getting too lost in all the research or the disinformation, if you will. But when I saw this, I had 3 pairs of sunglasses on, and another time I was using an arc TIG welding mask that auto dims down. It's got 3 layers of LCD that changes its consistency. But to safely watch the sun, I felt that was the only way and to save my eyes. But when the brightness of the sun disappeared, this appeared very, very, very light to the human eye. Behind the blue intense gradation levels that are right next to the sun when you look at it. And on photo, if you take a pinhole camera, the blue sky will get darker and darker as you get farther out on the frame. So I whipped out my phone and just using, okay, as you see here, a simple sun filter from my big camera. I put that over my iPhone 6 Plus, and I was able to manually expose up and down using this filter.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's fine. So now this is in Louisiana, and how long ago was it? And
this was on March 31st.
Oh, just recently. I mean,
just recently, just a couple days ago. My first footage came on in October of 2014 about. And this was just my most recent, and I'd say my best video, because I knew this time what to look for and what to do on when I saw it. And so I'm going to play it here. And what I'm doing this time, once I'm using a sun filter that's from my Canon lens and having it over top of my camera, I'm able to get a better view when my f-stop eye close down to a pinhole, which is right here. When it's at its brightest, that's about what the human eye can see. So that's why we can't see it looking straight at the sun usually, because of the gradient level of light coming into our atmosphere. In my opinion, I got to make sure I say that, because I'm definitely on board with any scientists or anyone helping out in comments or breaking it down. I follow the white papers on releases on a couple different channels, and they go over really good scientific data, and they source all their stuff as much as they can. In weeding out this very topic of Planet X or Nibiru or you know, a rogue system, a dwarf star, And the way this thing's behaving is starting to really, to me in my mind, be more of a dwarf star. Because at first, my videos I released, this is not Venus, taking photos or videos of an object that showed up in our western sky, but just brighter than heck. And knowing our planetary position and putting Venus in front of Earth and being its dark side to Earth, why is it being so bright at night, right before sunset, and about 40 minutes before to 50 minutes after? So right here, I ran to my backyard to get a different perspective and to maybe get away from some of the reflective items on the road. Now I'm closing the eye back down, zooming in, I refocus, and then finish with a zoom out shot. But right there, it's, to me, it's what could be causing Venus to have its crazy gravity wave that everyone's talking about.
You know, Danny, I was looking at that footage. Let me just jump in here, and I'm thinking of, I've seen cameras before that will pick up, they'll record the sun, and it's so bright that it causes another sun right next to it, but a smaller one essentially, or what looks like another sun, or a brown dwarf or something like that. So
you say the mass is so crazy. It's like four times more than Jupiter. I know my numbers are off, but it's more than Jupiter, even though it's like half the size of, you know, they explain it in the mass. And I went on one of the NASA.govs before they started taking out the missing footage, as you see on this, and I was like, what am I seeing? Around that same day of a different footage I'll show you I got on 125 on January 25th. This light anomaly, it disappears, but then we also see that. There's been a longer video since this one was taken of the completion of this anomaly. And I'm like, well, maybe eventually I'll see it on the Science Channel. Well, what on earth is that, right? That show is pretty wild and fun to watch. This is my footage I took of Venus. It took me forever to manually focus on this and be zoomed in by digital 40 and be fixed. My phone shakes a couple times there, unfortunately, but in cutting the sound off, this seemed to me, after focusing and zooming in, to be rotating or to be receiving a heck of a lot of auroras. And we're not the only planet that receives auroras. It's usually with planets with some sort of atmosphere or magnetosphere. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to remember, well, I'm trying to decipher if this is Venus or not. Now that Venus has moved, this object really hasn't shown up, at least in the southern states, right before sundown and right after. But moving ahead, it's consistent to me in being a time-lapse photographer for night of the Northern Lights. Purple